So I'm going to build a little bit on what I talked about in the last one about the single-eyed vision. So there's Matthew chapter 7. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. And so, you look at the Christian religion today. Most people who are members of a Christian church, they believe they're guaranteed to go to heaven after this lifetime. But what is Jesus saying? Very few people are finding the way that leadeth unto life. Very few people. Because most people are going in through the wide gate, the broad way. So basically Jesus is defining here, as I've talked about, there are two approaches to religion. He's defining there's two ways to approach religion. The broad way, which is what most people do, is thinking that the outer religion can guarantee your entry into the kingdom of God. The narrow way is to realize that entry into the kingdom of God requires a fundamental shift in consciousness, because the kingdom of God is a higher state of consciousness than most people have, namely the Christ consciousness instead of the death consciousness. But there's an interesting, mystical interpretation here. Enter ye in at the strait gate. The strait gate. As opposed to the wide gate. Well, what did I talk about in my previous talk? I talked about the duality consciousness, the divided vision, where in the duality consciousness there are always two extremes, and there's a gradations in between. So this is the broad way. It's divided into two opposite polarities. Whereas the strait gate, the narrow way, is the single-eyed vision of the Christ mind, which it's not that the Christ doesn't see the differentiation in the world. As I said, the Christ mind sees light and darkness. But the Christ mind sees beyond the dualistic consciousness and these artificial value judgments, and sees that underneath all of the appearances, everything is one, because everything sprang from God, from the universal Christ mind. That's the narrow way. That's the strait gate. You have to let your eye be single by seeing through these dualistic illusions, by following this gradual path where you are more and more tuned in to the vision, the single-eyed vision of the Christ mind, until you come to a point where your eye is single, because your vision is no longer divided by the duality consciousness, which could also be called the devil or Satan, as Jesus often referred to it, or he also called it the prince of this world, as in the quote where the prince of this world cometh and has nothing in you. So let's go on a little bit here. There's a quote from Luke chapter 13. Then said one unto him, Lord, are there few that be saved? And he said unto them, strive to enter in at the strait gate. For many, I say unto you, will seek to enter in, and shall not be able. When once the master of the house is risen up, and has shut to the door, and ye begin to stand without, and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open unto us. And he shall answer and say unto you, I know you not whence you are. Now this is again one of those revolutionary statements that can sound pretty radical. But you see what I've explained in these talks. There's a criterion that determines your entry into the kingdom. And that criterion is your state of consciousness. And it's as I said, you overcome the division in your own mind, that is the duality consciousness, and you have that single-eyed vision of a Christ mind. That means you are now in the kingdom in your mind. And that's why the master of the house will know you. But those who haven't made that transition in their minds, the master of the house doesn't know them because they're still in the death consciousness. So you see, I picked up all throughout my life that so many Christians have this very judgmental attitude. And you know, they think God is judgmental, based on the image from the Old Testament of the angry, judgmental God in the sky that's going to send them to hell. And really, you know, do yourself a favor. Look at the image of God that's given in the Old Testament and compare it to the image of God that Jesus gave. Okay? Because in the Old Testament, it's the angry, judgmental God in the sky. It's going to smite your enemies, but also send you to hell if you don't obey him or worship him. But Jesus' God is not the angry man in the sky. Jesus is the loving Father figure, as I said. Fear not, little flock, it's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So God is actually not judging us. It's not that there is this angry God up there that is judging whether we are ready to enter the kingdom, whether we are worthy to enter the kingdom. No. We are judging ourselves by our own state of consciousness. Basically, if you're judging others based on this dualistic value judgment, you are judging yourself out of the kingdom. You are judging, you are basically calling the judgment upon yourself that says you're not in the kingdom. It's not a matter of you being worthy to enter the kingdom. Fear not, little flock, it's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You were created worthy. And this is, again, one of those, you know, if I was to say one thing about most Christians I've met in my life, it's this. There are so many questions they are not asking. So many logical questions they are not asking. And here's just one of these questions. Why aren't we in the kingdom? Why are we not in the kingdom? Christianity, again, based on the Catholic Church, based on their doctrine of original sin, St. Augustine, so many people believe, even if not Catholics, but Christians and Protestants, they still believe we were born as sinners. God created us as sinners. Fear not, little flock, it's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Why would he have created us as sinners if it's his good pleasure to give you the kingdom? So why aren't we in the kingdom? Because we made the choice to go into this state of the consciousness of death, the consciousness of separation, the divided eye, the evil vision, where we are judging everything based on this dualistic value judgment. That's why we are not in the kingdom. We have removed ourselves from the kingdom by the choices we made. What is going to get us back into the kingdom? The choices we make to look at the beam in our own eye and to remove it. Now you see, there is a deeper aspect of this, which is, are we actually outside the kingdom of God? Where is the kingdom? Where did Jesus say the kingdom is? Within you. Well, that means the kingdom of God is within me right now. But if I am colored by the consciousness of death, the divided I, the evil I, the duality consciousness, I can't see that the kingdom of God is within me. I am in a state of illusion where I think I'm outside the kingdom. So what's the key to entering the kingdom? It is to overcome that illusion that I'm outside the kingdom, that there is anything outside the kingdom. But how do I overcome that illusion? I can't overcome it through the dual vision, the dualistic mind. I can only overcome it through the Christ mind, the single-eyed vision. And so you can say that it's really not a matter of entering the kingdom of God. It's a matter of overcoming the illusion that you were ever outside the kingdom of God. And then, when you have that single-eyed vision of the Christ mind, you see, oh, I am in the kingdom of God. Because the kingdom of God is within me. It is the state of consciousness that Jesus called life. But in order to get there, you have to be willing to look at the beam in your own eye. And the beam in your own eye defines how you see life. Right now, you're looking at life a certain way. You were brought up to look at life a certain way, possibly by a Christian religion. You have a certain life. And you have to be willing to let that life, that sense of life, die in order to follow Christ. You have to let the dead bury their dead in order to follow Christ. You have to let all the illusions that you think are real, that you think, oh, this is how life is, you have to be willing to let them die. And that's a process, I can tell you. You can't just do it like that. I spent 49 years going through this process. I'm not even saying it's complete yet, but I can certainly see I made progress compared to when I started, when I was 18 years old. And I've seen many other people who have walked the path, and some make faster progress than I do, and some don't. Not really the point. The point is, you can make the switch right now to see that this is the way that Jesus preached and demonstrated.